Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the panel room. This time we're discussing holiday disasters, real and imagined. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott, and I'll start by asking our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves, and tell us what their favorite holiday is and why. Dahlia, would you like to start?
Sure thing. I'm Dahlia Rose, and I write a multiple of genres. Right now, my favorite holiday is always going to be Christmas. That's how I grew up loving Christmas. I'm from the island of Barbados, so Christmas for us is a little different than the United States to start out, but coming here and embracing, the culture and everything, years now, I've kind of blended the two. So with my little floppy hat, Christmas is my day.
You, Patrick?
I'm Patrick Thomas. I write the Murphy's Law series, the Dear Cthulhu advice columns and books, and the Mystic Investigator books. And I also write kids books as Patrick T. Phibbs. And my favorite holiday is April Fool's Day. I used to really enjoy the pranks and, good-natured ones, nothing destructive of property. So that would be my favorite holiday. I have a bias against Christmas since my birthday is around that time, and it kind of conflicts. Although I still like Christmas.
John?
Hey, my name's John L. French, retired crime scene investigator at the Baltimore City Police Department, now part-time writer and general layabout. I write the Bianca Jones paranormal investigations, along with crime fiction, pulp fiction, and whatever the editor of the anthology wants me to write. My favorite holiday, well, I like all the holidays, but I think my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving, because it's the time when people get together and don't feel obligated to give gifts, cards. You just get together for a good meal and some good times.
And for those of you who haven't seen me before, I write historical fantasy for Falstaff Books. I also write science fiction mystery adventure with Jeannie Adams, and I publish several different subgenres of romance. So to start off the discussion, let's start with real life holidays. You've told us your favorite holidays. Have you ever had a real life disaster associated with that holiday? Patrick?
Real life disasters, I think I've been fortunate, other than some food poisoning on both a Christmas and a St. Patrick's Day, fortunately not the same year. I've been very fortunate that no real life disasters, mishaps perhaps, but nothing, movie worthy.
Okay. John?
Hey, Thanksgiving. Well, there were one or two times when I had to work Thanksgiving, but we won't get into whatever disasters we ran into that. Of course, I had a particularly interesting scene. My first Thanksgiving, when they actually held it because I was working day shift, and I came home for dinner, and they made the mistake of asking how was work and what did I do. And I told them in not too much graphic detail, and they never asked me that question again. But as far as this is, again, a mishap, I drove my mother home back to her condo on Thanksgiving evening. And a friend of mine who was in the hospital had a condo like one building up. And I had his keys, and it was sort of like part of my job was to go and check and make sure everything was okay at his condo, because he was going to be in the hospital. So I go in and everything looks fine. And then I hear drip, drip, drip. And I look around and I find that one of his, what do you call those things that go off when the fire starts?
Sprinklers?
When one of the sprinklers is dripping. And now this is Thanksgiving night, about 9 o'clock. Fortunately, my mother, I called my mother, she had a list, she had the emergency number. So I had to stay there until somebody came to look at the problem. And it turns out that the solution to the problem not on Thanksgiving, but the next day, was to turn off all the water in the building. So not only did I miss, Thanksgiving leftovers, but everybody else, had their water turned off that Friday. And for some strange reason, they all blamed me.
Dahlia?
Okay, one of my memories of growing up in Barbados was my mom. My mom loves to cook. This is one of our cultural things, is that we cook. Everyone's around and we dance and we have music and it's fun. I'm always posting pictures of my food on the internet. So kind of like traveled over with me now, but we also sip wine. And one of the traditions is that my dad's friends, my dad is a contractor, his friends would all come over and they'd bring my mama, bottle of wine, because she's the host, and she would sip and she would, cook and dance. And I remember that it was a bottle of wine in one of those wicker baskets. I now know that's a Chianti, but she just sipped it the whole day. And my dad was like, Elaine, maybe you should cut back. She's like, no, I'm fine. My mother was not fine. My mother collapsed like a straight board into the Christmas dinner. Then we spent the rest of the afternoon salvaging it and trying to tell her, it's okay, you're not drunk. And she's like, but I am really not drunk. And we're like, it's okay. And then she spent about 2 hours talking about how she glazed the ham, but it was hilarious for us kids. And the next day she was so embarrassed we were not allowed to talk about that Christmas ever again.
Well, my family's actually had several Christmas disasters, but the one that was the most problematic was I was in high school. And at that time, my parents had the dog's water bowls, terracotta bowl, under the sink, which was not enclosed, in their half bathroom. And my dad went back into the back of the house to do so. We were sitting in the living room and he was in the back of the house. And all of a sudden we heard this crash. And my mother starts calling him and nothing. And then he comes into the archway between the dining room and the living room and he just goes, and then he disappears. And so my mother got up and went to see what happened. Well, as it turned out, and he had been emptying the dog's terracotta bowl into the toilet to give her fresh water, and he dropped it. And terracotta met porcelain, and terracotta won. And we had this was Christmas Eve at 3:00 in the afternoon, and we had 17 people coming for dinner the next day. And we were lucky in a way that we lived in a small town. My mother had grown up there. The guy who ran the plumbing and electrical company had grown up with her. So they sent somebody out to replace the toilet at 4:30 on Christmas Eve afternoon, because we just had this horrible image of 17 people sitting down to a meal and no toilet, which would have been, we had another bathroom, but it was not close to the kitchen. And that many people, it's really good to have more than one bathroom if you're going to have all those people there for the day. So that's the worst one that has happened to us. And when I was like 8 or 9, I think I got Barbie's Dream House for Christmas. At that time, Barbie's Dream House was cardboard and it folded up and all the furniture punched out and it had to be assembled. It was cardboard. Well, the grown-ups had spent the day assembling the cardboard furniture, which I don't think they knew they were going to have to do. And they decided they would burn all the wrapping paper because we had a fireplace. And that was fine, except nobody checked to be sure the flue was open. So on Christmas afternoon, we were out in the front yard with my 80-year-old grandfather with all the windows in the house open, waiting for the smoke to clear up. And I remember what I cared about the most was I could not play with Barbie's Dream House after all that to get it ready. So that was more of a mishap because it cleared up pretty quickly. Well, it sounds like we have life-wise been pretty lucky when it comes to holiday mishaps.
Well, if we're talking Christmas mishaps, one Christmas, we were getting ready to go to my grandmother's house. My father was wearing his brand new Christmas suit, suit. And that's when I got a stomach upset. And let's just say he had to change his.
Oh dear.
Oh, well, has anybody
At
else,
least he wasn't wearing his birthday suit on his birthday.
Yes.
would anybody else like to share any other holiday related disaster stories that have happened in your family?
I think for
Actually,
me,
yours,
go ahead. Oh, I think for me, would be about 2 years ago. My daughter loves stuffing. She will eat stuffing all year round, but Thanksgiving is special. And I think about 2 years ago, my husband dropped the stuffing, and he was in the kitchen at that time, putting around, trying to get little bits of stuff I was cooking. And when he dropped the stuffing, I heard the most unnatural scream kind of come out of my daughter. That it was like if she was being chased by the hounds of hell, and she just dropped to her knees and act like this was the most terrible thing that ever happened in her life. And we had no stuffing for Thanksgiving, but I had to get up and make double stuffing the day after because she would not let it go. But the scream that came out of her, I laughed so much, even though she was distraught, because I was thinking it's just stuffing.
Well, favorites are favorites.
Hmm.
Were you going to say something, Patrick?
yeah, actually, your story reminded me of something that happened to my in-laws at a Christmas. Their water pump went, and the ground was frozen, and we basically had to prepare Christmas dinner by going out, getting snow, melting it, and keep doing that over and over again. And one pot of snow does not equal one pot of water. There's a significant decrease once you melt it, which takes a while.
I bet.
So,
Anybody else want to share anything else before we move on?
No.
Okay, well, even though the group of us have been fairly lucky in terms of not having multiple Christmas disasters or holiday disasters, people in books, TV, and movies are not nearly so lucky. So, what is your favorite holiday disaster movie? John, you want to start?
You say movie. When you get to
book, TV, whatever.
okay, I'll just say one sentence. As God is my judge, I thought turkey.
I know exactly what that is.
That every Thanksgiving I will watch. Somebody will post it online, or if not, I'll go look for it. I will watch it starting from Les Nessman's broadcast and just laugh myself silly. As far as Christmas movies, I dislike most of them. I would have to go with the Grinch, the original how the Grinch Stole Christmas, because to me that the singing, the Grinch, the Who's singing around where the Christmas tree was, just that says Christmas to me.
Yeah. And for anybody who's watching who actually doesn't know the context of the line that John quoted, would you like to explain it for them?
Okay. It's a thing. There was a TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati, and they weren't the number one radio station in Cincinnati, and they kept trying to do things. And the station manager and the newsman decide to hold a special Thanksgiving promotion, but they wouldn't tell anybody what it was. And it turns out that at a supermarket parking lot, they flew a helicopter over the parking lot and were going to give out free turkeys. But instead of landing and giving out free frozen turkeys, they threw live turkeys out of the helicopter. And as I said, they thought turkeys could fly, and the turkeys were hitting the cement, hitting the parking lot like, to quote Les Nessman, bags of wet cement. The surviving turkeys attacked Wes Nessman. But the final line is when the station manager comes in and tells this guy, God is my judge. I thought turkey.
Well, and that's your audio blipped out for just a second there.
Mine did?
Yeah, but you're back now, so it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that is, you say holiday disaster, and anybody who's ever seen that goes WKRP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share one?
I think mine is a
Um,
little bit off the cusp. I think that my favorite Christmas movie is Die Hard. They're all set
Yeah,
in,
that's a disaster, all right.
I know, and it's set in Christmas. So I I honestly, for Christmas, I can't watch Christmas cartoons because for me they all seem to be a little bit depressing. And then I remember watching The Little Match Girl when I was a kid and I bawled my eyes out all Christmas
Yeah.
Day. And I can't do that to myself because my feelings get hurt for these little cartoon things. So I have to go watch the explosions and the massive, array of bullets. So Die Hard is my favorite.
Patrick, did you want to add something?
Sure. There's actually a few that just pop into my head. One is Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
That one's
Mhm.
just a classic, family disaster film. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I think, is a very good movie, and things just keep happening and happening. And one that probably not a lot of people have heard of, but it fits it and it doesn't fit the other molds, is Anna and the Apocalypse, which is a Christmas movie musical zombie apocalypse. So it's cute in a zombie
I think I'm
apocalypse.
gonna have to find that now. It sounds like
Yeah.
it's right up my alley of things to watch.
Yeah. Well,
But the zombie apocalypse, I think, qualifies as a disaster. And at one point, they use a candy cane taken from someone's lawn to dispatch a zombie.
I think any movie with apocalypse in the title qualifies as a disaster movie. Our favorite holiday disaster movie is Pieces of April. And it stars Katie Holmes from before she was a big deal. And she is a young woman living in New York City, and she's estranged from her family for reasons that aren't really quite clear. But they are coming for Thanksgiving. And she lives with Derek Luke. And he's out running around the city, and they lead us to think he's doing one thing when really he's doing something else to get ready for the Thanksgiving. So she's getting Thanksgiving dinner. It's her chance to get back in with her family, and her oven dies. So she's running around her building because, of course, everyone is cooking a turkey today because Thanksgiving. So she's begging 15 minutes here and a half an hour there and 20 minutes here of oven time for her turkey, for her family coming home. And the building is full of eccentric people. So we have little scenes with all these eccentric people. And they cut between those and the family who are on their way. And we learned that not everybody in the family is thrilled to be going to have Thanksgiving with April. Some of them are less than pleased about it. And it's got a great cast, like I said, Katie Holmes and Derek Luke. Oliver Platt is in it. I think Patricia Richardson is the mother. And one of the actors from the Newsroom HBO show, John Gallagher Jr., I think is in it. And I forget who the woman who plays the sister is. I'll look it up and I can't remember it. I've got some kind of block. But anyway, it's a really sweet movie and it's full of heart. My husband was a little surprised that I liked it because, like Dahlia, I like movies where stuff blows up. I mean, stuff blows up, that's a great idea. It's always helpful. But that's our favorite Christmas movie. And it starts off with a disaster. Well, it's a Thanksgiving movie. It starts off with a disaster because the oven dies. And then everything else kind of rolls from there. And so it was a really interesting, quiet little movie. And the actors are really good, but it just kind of came out and disappeared. I don't know.
Nancy, you just came up with a great idea for a movie, and I think you could franchise it if you just had a movie called Stuff Blows Up. Be right up there with that one, what was it called? Shoot 'em Up.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yep.
It's hilarious.
It has Clint Owen.
Yes. But yeah, I'd go see a movie, Stuff Blows Up, just because of the title. It's sort of like why people went to see Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah.
You knew what you were getting.
Snakes on a plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why
Stuff Blows Up 37.
because I knew what I'd be getting. Yeah. Does anybody else have any other movies or TV shows that are holidays that don't go so well that you'd like to share?
Actually, if you consider a family get together as a sort of holiday, the old Dick Van Dyke Show was what they basically, it was a flashback episode to when Laura Petrie was having dinner, basically hosting dinner for her, I think for both sets of family, her family and Rob's family. And she had a cold and she took too much medication, and she was trying to do this dinner while on the verge of completely collapsing. And she drunk, So it was a kind of comedy that only Dick Van Dyke could pull off, or the Dick Van Dyke Show could pull off. But I've seen it once or twice, but not for a long time. But I recall it being a dinner disaster, and very, very funny.
Yeah. Would either of you all like to add anything, Patrick or Dahlia?
No, I just think, well, my version of holiday movies is to watch The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy. Everyone else is eating, and I'm in front of the TV because I'm that much of a big, LOTR nerd. And I mean, for me, another big holiday for us is Halloween, because if you see my front yard right now, there's a massive spaceship out there that my husband built, and it's blinking. And so last year when we had all of that bad weather, our clown tent blew away with the clown in it. And it flew through the neighborhood a few, streets over.
I wouldn't call that a disaster. I mean, that's just an enhancement to Halloween.
Oh, I think that the people that were screaming because of the clown, because I have some neighbors that are very scared of clowns, and I think we followed the clown in the tent by the screams we heard, and we found it about 2 or 3 streets over.
Well, I think that would be more special effects budget really went well.
Well, I promised my husband that I would mention his favorite Christmas movie and the disaster that happens near the end of it. His favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story. And one of his favorite parts is at the end where the Bumpuses are their neighbors, and the father, who's a real turkey hound, cannot stand the Bumpuses or their large unruly dogs. And at the end of the movie, the Bumpus dogs gain access to the kitchen where the turkey is sitting on the table, and they eat almost all of it. And so that kind of leads the family to have to do something else for Christmas dinner. And so I promised him that I would mention the Bumpus dogs. So I have now done my duty and put the Bumpus dogs out there for everybody to enjoy. So why do you think disasters figure so prominently in holiday movies? Anybody want to start?
I'll start. Well, first of all, we've all had holidays go wrong. One thing I didn't mention as a personal thing is when I was about 8 or 9, we all went to my uncle's house, and he took us all to 4th of July, fireworks thing. And a sparkler fell into the box of fireworks, and instead of going up, they went out, and everybody ran. I don't think anybody was hurt, but a panic ensued, and everybody ran. And I was just upset because I didn't get to see the fireworks. But everybody has had holiday disasters. So we sort of we see them on the air, we see them on television, we see them on movies, and think, well, at least it's not just me. And then too, as we said before the thing started, there's, a movie's not a movie, a TV show is not a TV show without some kind of conflict. And things going wrong and watching people try to fix them, whether it's trying to fight off the terrorist in the big building, or whether it's trying to figure out why the Christmas lights won't work, or trying out the sled and going 120 miles an hour down the hill. It's fun to watch. You see the conflict and you wonder, how are they going to resolve it? Are they going to resolve it? So it's, and the fact that it's a holiday, which means it's the family involved, and you get to see the family interactions. the aunt who wraps up the cat for Christmas, things like that. Who, by the way, or the grandmother by the way, that was Betty Boop. I found that out a while back. In the Christmas Vacation, the woman who played the grandmother who wrapped the cat was the voice of Betty Boop.
Wow.
So, but I think it's just that people like family movies, and they like movies where where there's conflict, where things go wrong and things are set right, and that's a holiday.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
It's kind of like Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong, will go wrong, and it always seems to happen around the holidays. And I think that if me, for instance, I use them as a cautionary tale, because if you've seen one Christmas tree blow up, you've seen them all blow up, and you're like, maybe we shouldn't plug all these lights into that one socket, because for some reason there's always some show where they put all the lights in one socket, and then the whole tree grows up, and then the curtain goes up, and then they spend Christmas with half of their house burnt down. So I think that we like to see the cautionary tale of it in a way, and it's amusing because we all know that it could happen to us. And we all know stuff happens, and we can't take it too seriously. It's a holiday. We want everything to go perfect, but it won't. But if you're people like my mom, and other people, we want everything to be perfect, and they take it too seriously. So I think the comedic aspects of the holiday movies and holiday disasters is what really gets us to take a breath and say, you know what? It's okay. We're still here together, and we're still having fun, and we still at least get to eat half the turkey, maybe. Or we'll order Pizza Hut. They're open on Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think. But it's just, we just see ourselves in these areas, and then we're just able to take a breath and step back and not put all that stress on our shoulders for one holiday.
Patrick, did you want to add anything?
I think the good points have been made, but from a plot device kind of thing, if a disaster happens on the holiday, the characters get to work to overcome it, whether they fight first and whatnot. And the whole point of a Christmas movie is at the end, like was said, that everyone comes together and it's okay because we're together, and that's the important part of the holiday. It's not the presents or the tree or the dead cat. It's that the family is together with the dead cat, and that way it gives us a movie plot that can work for a Hallmark film, a Chevy Chase film, Die Hard, because at the end they're back together again, with the husband and wife and the limo driver and the cop. Everyone, they have a nice holiday moment.
As John was talking, it occurred to me that there's a particular kind of conflict that happens in most feel-good family films. And it's frequently something that, yes, they might argue about it, as everybody has said, but it's not angstiness directed at each other, or at least it's often not. Sometimes the disaster brings out long-standing resentments, but those tend to be kind of darker holiday movies. So yeah, it's a disaster. It's terrible. We get irritated with each other, but it's not a constant butting of heads, because what you're working against is not each other. It's this thing that happened. We're trying to fix this thing so that we can have our good holiday. But that just occurred to me while John was talking. Does anybody want to add anything?
I think you've kind of nailed it, that it's, when you think holidays, you generally think family, or at least friends getting together. And so if there is a big disaster, it's magnified in that it's happening to people, from the point of view of the characters in the movie, it's happening to people they know and people they love. But if it's, something like you said, the oven's not working, or the Chevy Chase didn't get his Christmas bonus or something like that, at least he's got his family to to help support him and tell him, okay, it's bad now, but things are going to get better.
It's a movie that we used to watch a lot when our son was small, was Jingle All the Way. which stars Arnold Schwarzenegger
Oh.
as
Mhm,
a
yep.
alcoholic father who has promised his son that he will get his son the hot superhero toy of the year. And he forgets. And so he's in a chase all over the city looking for it. And Sinbad has promised his son the same thing and is also running all over the city. So they're vying with each other. And so there's conflict there, but neither one of them's really being ugly about it, although there's a little bit, hey, I got it and you don't, but that's not so dark and deep. And then Robert Conrad plays a motorcycle cop they are constantly causing problems for. They back into his cruiser, they spill hot coffee on him. It's one thing after another. And it's all conflict that's driving the story in the quest for this toy until the very end, but it's got that same feel good ending. But you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, what are they going to do this poor cop now? Because he just can't win.
Well, I know that, when my daughter was a lot younger than she is now, and a Christmas toy didn't work the way it was supposed to. Well, Santa has good elves, very competent in their job. But, he's got a lot of other elves too that aren't quite as proficient. And, oh, that must have been made by one of the bad elves. And we'll send it back and get one of the good elves, get something made by one of the good elves. Oh, okay.
I have a very large family. Between me and my husband, we have 7 kids. So shopping for Christmas starts in about October. Like I'm actually doing it right now because we're seeing so many things that people want are not on the shelves right now that you want to start early. But I mean, there was one point that I think I started Christmas shopping a week before Christmas, and I almost ended up a drinker after that because I'm like, why is everyone outside doing the exact same thing that I'm doing? I just want to get one toy, but 7 toys from 7 different places. So I think holiday disasters is just built around the chaos of
Yes,
holidays.
yeah, that's a good word.
Chaos. The holidays brings chaos. We all seem to lose our head just a little bit to try to make everything perfect. And being a mom and you want your kids to have this and you want your kids to have that. And, we all end up being those 2 guys, whacking into the cops, motorcycle every time trying to find that perfect toy.
And really, our kids would have just as great a Christmas without that toy. They'd be disappointed, but they'd still have a good Christmas. But yeah, I've been there too, like looking over for this particular thing. Um, we were fortunate in that the particular thing was very rarely the hot toy of Christmas. So it's not like all the other parents cleaned it out before we got to it. Although there was one time I was in Toys R Us on Christmas Eve looking for the hot toy of.
And they usually end up playing with the boxes anyway, so you can just go buy them a box.
Yeah.
I remember one year, my daughter was a bit older, and the hot thing was this new MP3 thing called the iPod.
Ugh.
And you could not find an iPod. And I mean, it was like you go into some place, well, we can take your order. We might have it in by January. Well, that's not, so I'm at work and I'm actually asking people at work, if you hear about an iPod, buy it and I will reimburse you generously, But then somebody said, well, have you tried going to apple.com? Okay. Went to apple.com. It's sort of like, yeah, what color do you want? Do you want it engraved on the back? When do you want, oh, okay. Forget what I said. Got one. So that was one of those gotta have it and a very simple solution, but they're not always the best. I remember the great Cabbage Patch shortage.
Oh God.
Oh yeah.
I was part of that Cabbage Patch shortage.
Pardon?
I was part of that Cabbage Patch shortage. I wanted one of those things so badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a coleslaw kid. It wasn't the same.
A little shredded up, maybe.
A little.
Well, so what's your favorite kind of disaster to see in a holiday movie? what sort of problems make you go, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit down and watch this? Dahlia, you want to start?
Oh, well, like I said, explosions. Something's exploding, and I am a really, really bad B movie addict. So sci-fi Christmas movies get me every time. They're the most stupidest things, but I will sit and I will watch them religiously, like, the Snowmageddon and, Christmas Jaws. And I was like, okay, this is stupid, but why am I watching it? They just seem so utterly ridiculous, and they take you away from what, the reality for a minute. And I think I watch those because they're kind of like, they're not going to happen. There's not going to be a Snowmageddon where like 8 Yetis destroy a small town, but I just watch it because I think that, it's fun.
Anybody else?
Actually, I think you may have figured out a way to save the Sharknado franchise. A very Sharknado Christmas.
They had ice sharks about 2 years ago, so they didn't, but they should do that. I'm sorry, I did love the Sharknado franchise. I'm so
So
ashamed
I
of
watched the
myself.
first one and I watched the second one, and after that, it just got too silly for me to watch.
Yeah, I watched them all, and again, I'm so ashamed, but I did.
Well, I like the Joker's Christmas. It's a half
Oh.
hour episode of the Batman.
Oh
and-
yeah, that was
Yep.
great.
yeah, I can still hear Mark Hamill singing.
Jingle bells, Batman
Batman
smells.
smells, Robin laid an egg.
Yeah, I blanked out on the first line after having said I can still hear it. But yeah, sometimes I think of that when I look at and I see Christmas lights. But was looking that up today, and it's the only Christmas episode in the series is the Joker's Christmas for that first series.
Yeah.
And romance has a lot of tropes that deal with holiday problems that lead to romance, like the snowed in together. Someone's going somewhere for something important and they get snowed in at the same inn, or somebody is mistaken identity, or somebody gets stuck and they're marooned and they get taken in at Christmas. And so it seems to me that happens more in romance than other kinds of holiday movies.
You've just described every Hallmark Christmas movie in less than a minute.
Oh, well, we don't have.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I like the short ones, like Charlie Brown's Christmas, or How the Grinch Stole Christmas, or like you said, the Joker's Christmas. I don't really like, well, I'm going to probably get a lot of negative feedback on this, but my least favorite Christmas movie of all time is It's a Wonderful Life.
And why is that?
Pardon?
Why is that?
Well, maybe it's because I'm a mystery writer and spent 40 years fighting crime. But at the end of it, the bad guy gets away with stealing the money.
Yeah, he does.
There needs to be some kind of. I mean, Saturday Night Live had the perfect the alternate ending to It's a Wonderful Life, but it's where the town folks realize who really stole the money and go and beat the Christmas out of them. But I don't, movies, that's, I also didn't like Elf because I couldn't buy the fact that everybody grew up except, but I don't really like those kind of movies, but I do like the shorter ones that quickly get to the point and, basically set up the problem, get to the point, everybody has roast beast.
Well, that's actually a good segue into who's your favorite holiday movie villain, your favorite troublemaker for the holidays?
Well, my favorite troublemaker has to be, the Grinch. Because, I mean, he steals Christmas. You can't cause more trouble than that.
Anybody else want to vote for the Grinch or offer an alternative?
I'm for the
Heat miser
Grinch.
and cold miser.
What, Patrick?
Heat miser and cold miser. hopefully I'm remembering them right from
Year
I'm
Without a Santa
Mr.
Claus.
Heat Miser.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Year Without Santa Claus, right?
Right.
Santa Claus is coming
Big
to
Bad
town.
Voodoo Daddy does a great version of that.
Well, my favorite Christmas movie is the original Miracle on 34th Street.
That is very good.
As the little kid, but doesn't really have a villain. I mean, at the end of it, the villains are the people who are trying to prove that Edmund Gwenn is not Santa Claus.
I don't know if the state's attorney is the villain because he's doing the job he's being paid for.
Yeah.
I think if you got to pick a villain, if you got to personify a villain, it's the psychiatrist. Seems to find something wrong with being happy. I mean, he's the one who convinces the apprentice Santa that there's something wrong with him.
That's a good point.
He's a villain. And actually, I think if you want to have a general villain, it's the air of disbelief in Santa and all that Santa stands for.
Yeah, that's not as focused as going down to Whoville and stealing everybody's Christmas.
No.
But it's the antagonist force in the movie.
Oh, and if we're talking Christmas villains or holiday villains, there's a movie that combines two holidays in a wonderful way, and that's The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
We've got Halloween, we've got Christmas, and we got the Oogie Boogie Man, who is a frightening villain. I mean, what are you going to do, Mr. Oogie Boogie? I'm going to do the very best I can.
Well, that's true. And sometimes Christmas movies do have villains in them. I'm trying to think of one I've seen where there's really, other than the Grinch and Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life.
Well, there's Dahlia, the villain in Dahlia's favorite Christmas movie.
You know, I've only seen that once, but yeah, he is. It's Alan Rickman, isn't it?
Yes, Snape.
Hans Gruber.
Yeah.
Yes, Hans Gruber is. I mean, he's not trying to steal Christmas. He's just trying to do other terrible things.
Do everything else.
Yeah.
But you have to love his name, Hans Gruber.
Yes.
Actually, as you guys were talking, this is going to be a very odd choice, but there is a South Park Christmas episode that, while South Park has a brilliant and subversive ending, and the villain is Saddam Hussein. Because what happens is Cartman realizes he's not going to get anything for Christmas because he's Cartman. So he has to come up with one big good deed. So Santa Claus will give him stuff. So he convinces Santa Claus that he needs to bring Christmas to all the children of Iraq. And Saddam Hussein shoots him down, takes him prisoner, and starts torturing him. So Cartman tells the other kids they feel really bad. So they go and get Jesus, who lives in South Park. And they're like, Jesus, you have to help save Santa. And Jesus is like, yes, I'll do it. And goes the whole Rambo thing. And he goes to Iraq and he breaks into the prison and he fights everybody off. He grabs Santa Claus. He brings him out. He gets him free. But in the last minute, he turns and throws his body over Santa Claus and takes the bullets meant for Santa. And they take Jesus's body back to the States. And then Santa Claus holds a press conference. And he goes, I'm only here today because of the bravery of one man. So from now on every Christmas, we will remember Jesus Christ. It was just brilliant.
Well,
so
yeah.
The subversiveness of it, that, the whole thing about Christmas, we know we will remember Jesus Christ. It's his birthday, So I just thought it was a South Park episode, but it was brave.
Yeah.
And that it came around that way. And it had explosions and gunfire.
NCIS LA does a Christmas episode every year, and they usually have explosions and gunfire.
Yep.
But I'm not remembering any of them as being particular standouts. It's like, oh, it's the Christmas episode.
And that's what you like to. I like to watch the Christmas episodes of certain shows. They'll come up and you'll know it's coming. And you're like, oh, well, the Christmas episode of The Rookie or something like that is going to come up, and some kind of disaster happenstance is going to befall them, regardless if it's a woman giving birth in an elevator or an earthquake, something is going to happen.
Yeah.
There's not really a disaster in it, but one of my favorite Christmas episodes, there was a TV show called Just Shoot. It was about the inner workings of a fashion magazine. And David Spade played the office assistant role named Finch. And there was a Christmas exchange of gifts, and he thought he was getting messed over with the gift they had picked out for him. So he decides to ruin Christmas for everybody, and the episode's called How the Finch Stole Christmas. And Kelsey Grammer narrates it in a rhyme scheme similar to Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And there's a subplot in which the photographer wants to get a Christmas tree, and he picks the scrawniest tree he can get, and he even comes in wearing a Charles sweater. So it combines How the Grinch Stole Christmas and A Charlie Brown Christmas.
The Charlie Brown Christmas is a classic. It
Oh,
just,
yeah.
it comes back every year, and we watch it every year.
Except now they've moved it over to CBS streaming, so you're not seeing it on TV anymore. That or The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, you have to actually go get their streaming service to see that. And I'm like, why? We've been seeing it for 20 years. Come on. That's like when you know the holidays are coming around. It's from the first time you see The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, all of the rest of the great holidays are going to happen.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good point to segue into. Something we've touched on a little bit. We haven't really talked about it in depth. What's your favorite feel-good holiday, disaster or not disaster, film, book, TV show, whatever? And what do you like about it so much?
I think I've already mentioned that with the Grinch. It has somebody stealing Christmas. It has the true meaning of Christmas, and then it's the presents and not the presents. That's important, which leads to one of my favorite themes in my stories with redemption, where the true meaning of Christmas comes through and the Grinch redeems himself. So, we can't get any better than that for Christmas. Crime and redemption.
Anybody else?
Well, for a non-Christmas movie, Groundhog's Day is a lot of disasters.
That's a
and lot of
holiday.
fun.
That's a holiday.
It's
Yep.
a holiday. So for a non-Christmas holiday movie, a lot more laughs than Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah, well, for me, and it's not considered a holiday movie, but The Return of the King and Battle of the Five Armies, because both of them came out, I think, either Christmas Eve or a few days before for the Christmas holidays. And I was in the movie theater. I didn't care. I went to the midnight show, and I think I stayed there till like 2 a.m. or something watching these movies, and they always count as Christmas for me because I know when they're coming on. I know, what? And when I watched that just about Christmas Eve, and that also goes for like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and even like Star Wars when they bring them out around Christmas. It just gives that feeling to you, even though it's technically not about Christmas.
Actually, anything that gives you that kind of feeling is about Christmas or Thanksgiving or what have you.
Yep.
We really like A Christmas Carol. There's so many different adaptations of it. I really like the Alistair Sim one, it's so old. It was filmed in the 1950s, and it's kind of fuzzy, but we have it on a DVD, so we can watch it anyway.
My favorite version is George C. Scott's. I feel like he was like the most human Scrooge. One that not a lot of people know about is Henry Winkler in An American Christmas Carol. But my very first, it'll always be my favorite because it was my first, was Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol.
I remember Mr. Magoo. Does anybody want to suggest anything that we haven't talked about that has to do with holiday disasters in real life or popular media?
I think we've covered like the
I think
gauntlet.
we've covered it all.
Well, I'll share one last thing that wasn't a disaster, it was a mishap. My parents moved into a retirement community toward the end of their lives. And in the last few years before they moved into the retirement community, on holidays, my husband, who's a really good cook, I'm not a really good cook, he is, would fix the turkey. And my mom would fix the trimmings, and we would take the turkey to their house about 25 miles away and take the holiday meal. And so we were going to go up there one Christmas, and he was putting the turkey in the car. And we had only one key to that car, which is a long story we don't need to go into right now. But he put the keys on the seat to adjust the roasting pan. And as he closed the door, he realized the keys were still on the seat.
Oh.
And so this is Christmas Eve. This is 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve afternoon. And we were supposed to leave because we're bringing dinner. And we found a 24-hour locksmith. Remember the yellow pages? The yellow pages were really useful. We found a 24-hour locksmith in the yellow pages. And he was not what you might call really happy about being called out on Christmas Eve. And we were sort of thinking, well, if you don't want to come out on holidays, don't advertise that you work 24/7, maybe. But he came and he unlocked the car, and we got to go and have Christmas dinner. But for a while there, it was looking kind of iffy because, as my husband said, you feel so stupid when you do something like that. And I do stuff like that all the time. So I fully understand why he feels stupid doing something like that. But it all worked out okay. So to wrap up, please, for everyone, tell all of us if there's anything that you are working on that you think people would be interested in, anything that's holiday themed, where people can find you. Patrick, do you want to start?
Sure. I have 2 holiday disaster themed books. One that John and I did together called The Santa Heist, where the main story, it's a collection of Christmas tales. The main story is Santa Claus has been franchising out different cities because it's gotten too big for him. And in this particular city, the rich have been paying off the Santa, and so the poor kids are not getting anything and the rich kids are getting everything.
Aw.
So this one particular crew decides they're gonna, rob Santa, and they're gonna,
Sleigh Jack.
even things out a little bit. And it runs the gambit. I'll mention a couple of my stories and John can mention his. I have one that takes place during Herod's killing of the babies. Nothing says Christmas like that. I have something involving a Christmas tree and a serial killer, because again, nothing says Christmas like that. And I actually have a little bit of a touching story with a banshee detective, and someone who thinks he's Santa Claus, which it's a wonderful trope, but works really good for Christmas stories. And I also wrote Fool's Day, which is the second book in my Murphy's Law series. It takes place on April Fool's Day. And what happens is every April Fool's Day, the tricksters of myth and legend, Coyote, Hermes, Will-o'-the-Wisp, they all meet, see what prank they can pull. And then they meet at Bullfinch's pub to see who pulled the best prank and give an award. And this year, one of the tricksters comes back and takes possession of his present day body. And it turns out that there's going to be a nuclear holocaust. And so they have to stop it, but it's April Fool's Day, nobody believes them. So we have a handful of tricksters who have to face off against 2 fairy kingdoms and the US Air Force to basically save the world.
And you used your April Fool's Day.
And I used April Fool's Day. And
And
we've got, Sun Wukong, Coyote, Hermes, Bubba Sue, who's a gremlin who grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So we have a nice variety of characters.
And to continue what Pat was saying about the Santa Heist, my stories include Mr. and Mrs. Scrooge. Yes, I married a MILF. Deciding to save the spirit of Jacob Marley because the spirit of Jacob Marley in effect saved Scrooge. There's the story of Bethlehem told through the eyes of a Roman soldier. There is a murder in the North Pole, and a private eye gets called by Santa to help solve the murder of an elf. Because nothing says, as Pat says, nothing says Christmas like the dead elf. And then another, and then a story where a gentleman adventurer with a flair for magic gets called upon to save the spirit of Christmas. So that is Santa Heist, and you can get it from Pat's Amazon page, my Amazon page, or you could go to the publisher's page, boldventurepress.com, and get it direct from them.
Tanya?
I don't have anything of as deep as apocalyptic as that, but my first book with Hallmark Publishing, yes, it's a Christmas book, is coming out October 19th, which is next week. And it's filled with a bunch of, it's a Fish Out of Water series where my heroine moves from New York and she's in a very small town in Juneau, Alaska. There's a turkey named George that was not eaten for Thanksgiving, and now there's a goose named Henry that was not eaten for Christmas, and they both seem to have a vendetta against my heroine. And there's stuff going on with a snowmobile, and basically New Yorkers do not know how to handle more than at least a foot of snow. And you can find this on Amazon October 19th. It's up for pre-order. And if you're just looking for me, you can find me on my website, www.dahliaroseUnscripted.com.
Dahlia Rose Unscripted, you said?
Yep, .com.
Thank you. I have Christmas on Outcast Station, which is science fiction mystery with Jeannie Adams. And Jeannie's story involves a princess who is waiting on Outcast Station to be picked up by the people from her planet because she's the new queen, and she disappears. It's called the Princess Problem. So the marshal on the station has to find her before her countrymen arrive, or her fellow planetary people, not really countrymen so much, so as to avoid a diplomatic incident. And in my story, it features the newest marshal on the planet, because her story takes place on the station, mine's on the planet. And the chief marshal on the planet is not the same one as the one on the station. And the hero of the story is the top of this guy's hit list and the bottom of the seniority, so he's working Christmas. And what should happen but a Scorpioid race who don't really have much use for humans have an invaluable artifact stolen and one of their members murdered. And it's his job to solve the crime before the holidays, and it's called Scorpions for Christmas. And I also have, I'm part of the Caneham Castle writing group. We have Christmas at Caneham Castle, which is was out 2 years ago. Trick or Treat at Caneham Castle, which was out last year, and in January or late December, we will have Ring in the New at Caneham Castle. I won't be in that, but I'll plug my buddies. So you can find information about me at nancynorthcott.com, or you can find me on Twitter, where I spend far more time than is good for me, and here at ConTinual. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight and sharing their
If I may just plug my website as well.
Absolutely.
PatThomas.net or PatrickTFibbs.com for the kids' books. Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. Anybody else want to add anything before we wrap?
Yep.
Okay, well then that's it. Thank you all for joining me, and thank you everyone. Thank you to everyone who's watching, and may all your holidays be happy.